بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. We ask Allah to grant us the sincere intentions. Praise be to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, who made it be the case that the religion of Islam is the religion of truth. And praise be to Him Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, who granted us the correct belief. Praise be to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, who enabled the Muslims to know their Creator, knowing His attributes, knowing what is not permissible to be among His attributes, and knowing what it is permissible to attribute to Him Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Allah deserves praise for having enabled the people of knowledge to strive and to extract the religious judgments from the Book of Allah Ta'ala and the sayings of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We are living in times where there are many opinions. Beyond religious bounds, beyond speaking about religiosity, but even within religious matters, even within Islamic circles, not only in the masajid or the Islamic centers, but in people's households. People will speak freely about what they think is correct religiously. This is today at a level that it has never been before. And that is primarily due to social media and technological advances, where a saying or an opinion, an insult, a lie, any one of these things can spread very quickly. A single person sometimes can spread what is in their heart without arguing about whether it is something that is good or bad. They can spread it to thousands of people in an instant. If this was used for good, as some of the Muslims do, then they could spread good amongst many people at one time. So this is good. But then the flip side of that is that if a person wanted to spread evil, even in religious circles, if they wanted to say statements, bring out new ideas or revised understandings of religious law and ayahs of the Quran, things that there is a consensus and an agreement upon. If someone wanted to do that, then they'd be able to do that very quickly with the tap of a screen or the push of a button. For this reason, the opinions have become many and they have become known. And therefore, the beliefs of people, they have also increased in number, the different types of beliefs. Even religiously, different conspiracy theories that people have about certain religious matters. Some based upon their arrogance, others based upon the lack of knowledge, some based upon raw emotion or past experiences. This person, he adopts his own understanding here because he read a few religious books by some authors who have the names of Muslims. And this person, because of a podcast they heard that was Islamically orientated, they adopted some of the ideas that go against that which the Prophet revealed sallallahu alaihi wasallam, either in bringing about something new that does not agree with the principles that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught, or by belying some of what he taught alayhi salatu wasalam, by, for example, saying that rule that Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam taught, it doesn't apply in our times. It was for those times, and now because we have advanced and we are more accepting and so on, that rule has been abolished. And by that a person blasphemes. By that a person, even if they think they are a Muslim, they become a non-Muslim. An example of that is that some people who claim to be Muslims, they say we are critical thinkers. We want to understand the laws that were revealed to Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam in light of today's societies, the differing demographics that exist, the mixing of people and ideas and cultures, and we want to find one streamlined way forward for all. So let's look a revisionist look at the rules that were revealed to him alayhi salatu wassalam, and then they end up, for example, denying some things that are known by consensus. Some of them would argue and say, why is it that the man, he is the one in the marriage that possesses, that divorces? Some would say, why is it that the man, among siblings, a brother and a sister, why is it that the man, he gets twice as much in inheritance than his sister, than a female? Why is it that, and why is it this, and why is it these things? Then they would say things like, what is more suitable in today's modern and civilized society, and this is a modernity that they have thought up, civilized according to their definition. They would say these rules don't apply today. And they would perhaps call themselves 21st century Muslims. But in actual fact, by denying what Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam came with, they would be blasphemous. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala eternally willed that all of the prophets that would be sent at the times that they were sent at, to the nations to which they were deployed, the rules that they were ordered to teach, the rules that were revealed to those messengers, and then the prophets, when they continued the missions of the messengers, teaching those very rules at those times to those people, the scholars said that Allah eternally willed that those rules would be the best rules for those times. And the rules differed. Some things that were permissible for some Muslim nations of some prophets in the past are today haram. For example, in the past, when there was no idolatry, there was no worship of statues, it was permissible. This is many thousands of years ago. It was permissible. Nobody had worshipped an idol up to this point. It was permissible within the Islamic law that prophet at the time, Prophet Idris alayhi salam, was ordered to convey and follow. It was permissible to form a statue to remember a parent or a deceased loved one. But then after that, idol worship occurred. And after that, in a law revealed to one of the later messengers, it became haram. It became impermissible to even form three-dimensional images of humans, animals, insects, anything that usually has a soul. So that rule that was revealed to the Prophet of that time, in it being permissible to form these images, of course not for worship, that was the best rule for that time. And at this time, in the nation of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, the best rule is this, that it is an enormous sin for a person to depict such an image. When we speak about morality, a person having a moral compass, a person doing good and staying away from evil, what defines morality for a Muslim, or what distinguishes something immoral from something moral, is the religious law. Whatever the Messenger of Allah, Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, taught is an obligation, or what he recommended, or that it is blessed, or that it is rewardable, then this is something that is morally good. And anything that he deemed to be blasphemy, or conveyed that its doer will be afflicted with a grave torture, or that something is impermissible or sinful, then this is morally bad. This is the yardstick. This is the criterion. This is the meter by which, or the scale by which we judge. So nowadays, this scale, you could say, for the most part, in the situation of many people, has been thrown out of the window. So there are so many opinions, and one of the reasons for this is ignorance, is mass ignorance. So there are many different schools of thought, if you will, many different opinions. Some people willing to debate and to even be ridiculed or insulted for their opinion, but they would stick to it. This opened the doors for everyone, the young and the old. Teenagers sitting at home, to people playing on their phone while they're at work. The young and the old, male and female. For them to access information that hasn't been checked, that hasn't been ratified by the rules that the scholars taught, the young and the old, the doors were opened up for them to have an opinion, and then encouraged also, not only in non-Islamic circles, but within Islamic circles. Like, for example, you take the Al-Azhar University, the famous Al-Azhar University. Perhaps 100 years ago, it started to decline. And that is because a number of people, but one in particular, he began to encourage those people that came to study that were nowhere near scholarship, that studied for 2 or 3 years. He encouraged them, and he wrote a treatise on this, an infamous treatise, saying that, or encouraging in it, the people to perform al-ijtihad. Al-ijtihad means for a person himself to give a religious verdict, opening the Quran and looking at the hadiths, because they are now readily available online or the books are printed. He encouraged people to perform al-ijtihad. Al-ijtihad is what is done by a jurist, a qualified Islamic jurist, like Al-Imam Al-Shafi'i, like Al-Imam Abu Hanifa and these other mujtahids. And so, Islamically even, there were many groups. There became many different sects, many different factions, splintering off each other, differing with each other, calling the other zindiq, misguided, fasiq, major sinner, kafir, making what is known as at-takfir, rendering each other non-Muslims. And all of them in this, they took a path to try to substantiate their opinion. Whether they were people that attributed what is non-befitting to Allah, like they attributed to Allah that it's possible that Allah would lie, which is kufr to say, or whether they were people that said that Allah is something that is in the sky, a large mass in the sky that comes down every night and goes up, like a bouncing ball, comes down and then goes up, comes down and goes up like this all night. These people also, these non-Muslims, they also looked into the Quran and they looked into the hadiths, searching for things, searching for ayahs that could, if you put a slant on them, then they seem to support their claim. There appeared people, for example, there appeared a person that said that it's possible, wal-'iyadhu billah, for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as-sadiq, al-amin, the truthful, the trustworthy, to commit mistakes when it comes to conveying religious knowledge. If you can't trust the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, who was given this status by Allah, then who can you trust? We saw people who even to this day say that it is the slave himself, the man or the woman, the human, him or herself, who has the power of Allah to create their own deeds, resulting in them saying that there are many creators, not La ilaha illallah, but as though they are saying kullu ahadin ilahun, that everyone is a God, wal-'iyadhu billah. So all of these groups got together, even those that claimed, like the Qadiyaniyah, la'anahumullah, that claimed that Ghulam Ahmad al-Qadiyani, he was a, how did they put it? They said that his prophet, that he was a prophet, after Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And that his prophethood was like a shadow prophethood, in the shadow of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So they found a few ayahs and some hadiths, they put a slant on them, they turned them upside down and they said, look, what's understood from it is Ghulam Ahmad. Walayadu billah. Allah revealed in the Quran, يُضِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا وَيَهْدِي بِهِ كَثِيرًا. Allah revealed the Quran. And it is by the Quran that many people are, of course, guided. But also some people will read the Quran, they will misunderstand because they didn't learn in the correct way. And they will get an idea, and people love their own ideas. Like to say, when they give birth to their own idea. And then they want to see it through. So when a person searches for something, they usually find it. In any form that it appears, they'll find it. So if someone is searching in the Quran for something that supports this fallacy that they are upon, they will find something twisted and slanted. And it will work for them. So they took all of these misguided factions and sects, they took a path to try to prove what they were upon. And this is the state of many people today. And there are only a few compared to most of the people on earth. There are only a few who really fear Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and in whom Allah created sincerity, and to whom Allah granted the correct belief. And they are the ones that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned when he said about the groups within this nation, within the people that say we are Muslims, within those people that attribute themselves to Al-Islam. These are 73 groups. 73 groups that would claim to have Islamic ideas, claiming that the Quran is their book, or having some form of Islamic law. The Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّهُمْ فِي النَّارِ إِلَّا وَاحِدًا. He said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, all of them are in the fire except one. And he said, وَهِيَ الْفِرْقَةُ النَّاجِيَةُ, and it is the saved group. That group who by the generosity of Allah and the mercy of Allah, they were granted al-Iman, and then they were granted to die upon al-Islam. They were granted the ability to do the good deeds, to protect their Iman, to protect their religiosity, to protect the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam against what people accuse him of, and to protect the religious law, and to defend the religion of Allah Ta'ala. These people are al-firqatun najiyah. And their mention came up again and again in the hadiths. Sometimes the Prophet mentioned them alayhi salatu wassalam and said al-jama'ah, the group, or the people of the sunnah, the people of the prophetic way. These are all the same group. So nowadays we live in such times where the one trying to hold on to the correct belief and of course the religious law in implementing the knowledge of the religion as the Prophet taught, alayhi salatu wassalam, they are very few. The Prophet gave an example. Approximately 1,500 years ago, because Allah revealed it to him, that the situation of the Muslims in this nation, the nation of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, will reach such an extremity that those that are trying to hold on to the religious law, trying to stay away from haram, trying to fulfill their obligations, they will find it very difficult. That's why he said, alayhi salatu wassalam, that in those days, he said, in those days, gesturing to the future, he said that a qabid, like someone grasping, literally a grasper, al-qabidu fihi ala dinihi, the one grasping, holding on to his religion, to the religious rules, trying to do the good deeds, staying away from haram, protecting his belief against all these opinions. He said, yakunu al-qabidu fihi ala dinihi, the one holding on to his religion, yakun kal-qabidi ala al-jamr, like the one that is holding on to a burning coal. That is not, of course, easy. If a person attempted to do that, they would burn themselves, no doubt, so many times, trying to hold on to the burning coal. This analogy that the Prophet ﷺ put forward was one that illustrates to us that these times are times in which it is difficult to hold on to the religious rules. When our Shaykh was asked about this, radiyallahu anhu, about this hadith, he said, ذَاكَ زَمَنٌ قَدْ مَضَى. He said, that is a time that the Prophet spoke about, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that has been and gone. Meaning that now it's worse. It's even worse. This time that was described has been and gone. The Prophet ﷺ also described the future which is appropriate to today. He said ﷺ that in the future a time will come where that which is good and honorable will be seen as bad. Even among some people who are raised in Muslim households, who, for example, don't pray. If you travel with them and they see you praying in a public place, it shows on their body language that they are embarrassed. They think it's strange. They would rather that you didn't do that. He said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that yakunul ma'rufu munkaran, meaning that the good will be seen as bad. And he said, وَيَكُونُ الْمُنْكَرُ مَعْرُوفًا, and that which is, he said, that which is actually putrid, despicable, sinister, lowly, and bad, that which is bad will be seen as good. We all live in this day and age. The examples of that are many. I don't even have to mention one. There are so many things that are haram, that are bad, that nowadays are celebrated or encouraged or praised. You think about that for a second. Of course, we know as Muslims, the Prophet, this was revealed to him, alayhi salatu wassalam. How would, if a non-Muslim was to look at this, they would have to ask the question, how would this man know, alayhi salatu wassalam, that things would become so bad, that it would become like this? The Prophet ﷺ described these times, and he said, "Fitanun كَقِطَعِ اللَّيْلِ الْمُظْلِمِ." In the future, there will be trials and tribulations, there will be hardships, physical, emotional, social, financial. He left it open, alayhi salatu wassalam. He said there would be hardships, and look how he described it. He was the most eloquent human, alayhi salatu wassalam. He said, fitan, trials and tribulations, كَقِطَعِ اللَّيْلِ الْمُظْلِمِ, like small pieces of the black night, the dark night. Look how many connotations there are there. It's dark, there is no light, so there's a connotation of something negative here, something evil. And when the day comes, usually this brings hope, it brings relief. You look at the sun rise in the morning and you feel energetic, you feel like it's a new day. But when it's night time, and a person is alone and a person is thinking about the grave and about death, then that's when it really, really hits hard. He said, alayhi salatu wassalam, there will be trials and tribulations that are like small pieces of the dark night. He described one of these trials. He said, one of these trials is يُصْبِحُ الرَّجُلُ مُؤْمِنًا وَيُمْسِي كَافِرًا. In the future, a person would in the morning be a Muslim, and in the evening al-Iman would have left his heart. He would have become a non-Muslim. And he said, وَيُمْسِي مُؤْمِنًا وَيُصْبِحُ كَافِرًا. And in the night, when he goes to bed, when he retires to his bed, or when he enters into the evening, he will be a believing man or woman with Iman, the correct belief, faith in his or her heart. وَيُصْبِحُ كَافِرًا. And in the sabah, in the morning, because of certain things that he or she engages themselves in, they would become a kafir just like that. Between a morning and an evening, and then between an evening and a morning. In this there is a big sign, in that many people will fall out of Islam. Many people will fall out of Islam. Inshallah, we'll continue this after a short break. Usually the break's at 8. Yes. We'll take a short break, inshallah, and we'll continue in 5 minutes. Let's say La ilaha illallah. لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. Let's renew our intentions for the sake of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. He continued, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, saying, after mentioning that a person could be a Muslim in the morning and become a non-Muslim in the evening, or be a Muslim in the evening and become a non-Muslim in the morning. He continued the hadith. The Shaykh of our Shaykh, one of the teachers of our Shaykh radiyallahu anhu, he said, every time I heard this hadith, I would be astonished, I would be amazed, as though I couldn't put my finger on it, as though I felt that I hadn't really understood. Sometimes it's like that. You know what the words mean, but there's an extra dimension or an extra element that you require to feel like you fully understood it. And sometimes, or a lot of times actually, that's when you experience the matter. You read about it, you understand it, you appreciate it, you see the different sides. But once you experience it, then now you holistically, you fully understand it. He said that I would be very surprised by this hadith. I'd be amazed. And I never really understood it until he said I went to Egypt. And this was perhaps in the late 1800s, 1880 or 1890 or before that. He said I went to Egypt and I saw in the morning that they had just started printing newspapers. And I looked at one of them and I saw printed across one of these newspapers something that was kufr. He said, and he would have continued looking in these newspapers and seeing all the impermissible statements that are being mentioned, that are then either being distributed from building to building, flat to flat, or as the people go to work, they pay a little bit and they purchase and they read. He said, it is then that I understood this hadith, that a person may have been a Muslim in the evening, in the night, then they wake up in the morning, and first thing in the morning, like clockwork, they read the newspaper, and due to their ignorance, they read what's in it and believe it, and because it's something that is blasphemous, they would become a kafir. He said, it is here that I truly understood this hadith. So one of us might think now, well, how many people actually read the newspaper? Or, well, what are the chances of somebody living in an Islamic country like Egypt and reading something that was kufr? I mean, why would the newspaper print something kufr anyway? You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Then you think about, okay, that's the newspaper. What about nowadays? When people, I mean, I don't know how much people nowadays even buy newspapers. Even newspapers are online now. But now in everybody's hand, a person has a phone or a tablet with which they can scroll through articles or posts or pictures with captions on them or videos, or there's all this information. And the internet is not run by somebody like Sayyiduna Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu or Sayyiduna Umar radiyallahu anhu, the first and second caliph, who make sure that they check all the sound bites and everything that's going on in the airwaves and everything that is being printed or recorded or... No. Most, of course, there are more non-Muslims in the world than there are Muslims. Most of what is being distributed and disseminated is not by Muslims, number one, so there isn't that care of, we can't, there are those red lines religiously, we can't say this and we can't say... No, that's not there. And then there are ignorant Muslims who spread whatever they want to spread. So if you think about it, 100 years ago, that scholar, the Shaykh, one of the Shaykhs of our Shaykh, he said this. He said that, there I realized that I understood the hadith. Okay, fast forward 100 years. Allahu Akbar. Where you could say, kufr is everywhere. Everywhere. If not kufr, then major sins. If not major sins, then small sins. Everywhere. You cannot escape it. If you have electricity, you cannot escape it. He continued the hadith alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, وَيُصْبِحُ مُؤْمِنًا وَيُمْسِي كَافِرًا يَبِيعُ دِينَهُ بِعَرَضٍ مِّنَ الدُّنْيَا قَلِيلٍ. This person, he would be a believer in the morning and a kafir by night. He would sell his religion for a very small part of the dunya. He would trade his faith. He would fall out of Islam. Faith would be wiped from his heart. In return for what? In return for something worldly that is very, very low. And this is what a lot of people do. Sometimes, to make non-Muslims happy, they would compromise in their own religious matters. Sometimes because they care so much for the feelings of some of the non-Muslims, that they would be very easy about falling into sins. For example, they would very easily, many men would very easily shake the hand of a female colleague who is not his sister or his wife or his mother, because she might feel a certain way. That's just one example. Or that a Muslim, he would say, in this winter time, in the holiday season, let's say, because he doesn't want to feel left out, so when his non-Muslim colleague, co-worker says to him, Merry Christmas, he says, Merry Christmas to you too. He says it back. When he knows that this is not something that the Muslims practice. For example, people would very easily fall into sins and sometimes even kufr for something small, very small. One would sell their hereafter for something very, very small that is worldly. The Prophet described it, alayhi salatu wassalam. He said, يَبِيعُ دِينَهُ, he sells his religion, بِعَرَض, for something, مِنَ الدُّنْيَا, of the world that is قَلِيلٌ, very, 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 very small, for something tiny. It is a time in which the religion that Allah revealed, about which Allah revealed, إِنَّ الدِّينَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الْإِسْلَامِ, it is a time in which this is belied. And very few people, like Shaykh Abdullah, like our Shaykh, and other scholars, compared to the majority of the people, they are very small in number. They rose and they continued to teach the religious knowledge, to warn against the new misguidances that were appearing. And the words of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam are true. He said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْعَثُ فِي هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ عَلَى رَأْسِ كُلِّ مِئَةٍ مَنْ يُجَدِّدُ لَهَا دِينَهَا. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala would dispatch within the nation of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam every century, at the turn of every century, one person who would revive the religious law, who would teach those fundamental teachings, who would order the obligatory and forbid the evil, so people once again know. So without going into mentioning who the different scholars said were the different revivers within this nation, because that is a point of debate amongst some Muslims, this is not the issue. The issue is that this was said by the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, and it occurs every century. Some people want to protect, they want to defend the religion of Al-Islam, but they don't have enough knowledge. So they end up doing more bad than they do good. Some people want to defend the religion, but they are not intelligent. They are not wise. So again, they either don't know how to, or they try and they cause a mess. The only way to do that is to learn the Islamic knowledge. There are many statements that people utter today that they do not even think are sinful, when in actual fact they cast them out of Islam. And that is also a witness to what the Prophet ﷺ said when he said that a person would utter a statement that he thinks is harmless. He thinks is harmless. This means that he doesn't know how much harm there is in what he is going to say. It doesn't appear to him. The amount of harm that it will cause is not apparent to him. But because of that, he would fall into hell, a distance that is as wide as what is between the east and the west. And this hadith was narrated by both Al-Bukhari and Muslim. So it is an authentic hadith. It is supported by a hadith narrated by At-Tirmidhi, because the hadiths, they complement each other. The Prophet ﷺ didn't contradict himself. He may have spoke while he was in Al-Madinah, and he spoke while he was in Mecca about the same topic but with different words and more details. These details, they did not contradict each other. In a hadith narrated by At-Tirmidhi, the Prophet mentioned ﷺ that this distance was a distance of falling into hell for 70 years. If a person falls from a high place, then it takes them seconds to get to the bottom. If you look at some of those mountain ranges, or you look at the Grand Canyon, for example, where you look down and you feel like you can't see the bottom, it only takes seconds to get down. If a person was to fall, mere seconds it would take for a person to get down. What about falling for 70 years? And in those 70 years, a person would experience excruciating torture. And then they get to the bottom of hell. The Prophet ﷺ, in other hadiths, he clarified that this statement that this person has said is actually a kufr statement. And it shows also that when he said the person wouldn't know the amount of harm this statement would cause him, it means the person didn't even know that it would land him in hell. So it's not an excuse for a person to say, well, I didn't know that this would make a person a kafir. As though to say, well, I'm not going to be held to account for that. Or how would I be to blame for that? A person has to learn before they speak, before they move their tongue, before they utter a statement. They need to know what it means. Because Allah revealed, مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. No one utters any statement, مَا يَلْفِظ مِنْ قَوْلٍ. Even one statement a person does not utter except Raqib and Atid, the two angels, they write it down. They write down everything, even that which is permissible. Even the permissible deeds that are not things that are sinful and not things that are rewardable. Even when a person does not attain reward or commit sin, the things that they say, nonchalantly, things that they say, these things are also written down, but then later they are deleted, but they're written down. How many people there are who know the world and the worldly matters very well. They know how to gather money. They know how to invest. They know how to... That by itself is not dispraised, by itself, if it's backed up with religious knowledge. But here we're talking about people who are very knowledgeable about the world while being, and the worldly matters, while being ignoramuses about the hereafter, about what benefits them in the hereafter. How many people are there who know about the worldly matters? They are very knowledgeable about them. They know how to gather money. And they know also how to manipulate people. They know very well how to entice people into doing what they want. They know how to put pressure on people. They know the right buttons to push. They know how to be devious. They know how to connive. They know all of these things. They've experienced people. They know how to do all of these things. An example of that is what we saw when, not so long ago, when we saw the spread of what was known as a certain virus. How is it that there were people that played with other people? You can't go out, you can't do this, you can't see your grandparents, you can't do that. Okay, now you can go out for a jog if you like. You can go for a jog, but it can only be 10 minutes. Now you wear a mask, now you take a mask off. Now you've got to wear sanitizer, now you... They played with the minds of the people. Then later on they said, yeah, all of those precautions, they didn't. How they played with the people? You remember Boris? How they played with the people, subhanallah. Because this life is what means everything to them. While these people, they are ignorant about the matters of the hereafter. They do not differentiate between what is good and bad. Because they have no religious scale. They do not differentiate between what is belief and disbelief. Whenever they hear something, even from the people of misguidance, If they like it, they adopt it. When they hear words that are said by ignorant people on social media, whether they made the words rhyme or they said them quickly or they were just utterly stupid, they adopt them because this person is a sad state. The scholar said, the Prophet said alayhi salatu wasalam, that such people, they follow any ignoramus and they follow every cawing of a crow, like when a crow caws, he makes that sound. It's like whenever they hear this sound, that's the way they go. Whenever they hear a person saying something or has an opinion or produces an idea, they go that way. And they sway with every wind. The wind goes this way, they go that way. The wind goes this way, they go that way. They do not have a solid cornerstone, or they do not have a pillar that they can hold on to, which only comes if a person has learned the Islamic knowledge. This is how they can protect their religiosity. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned a person whom Allah disapproves of. He said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, inna Allah yubghidu. Allah disapproves of this person. And he mentioned certain attributes. Kulla ja'fariyin jawab. He went on to saying, Sakhabin bil aswaq. This person, from a worldly point of view, he shouts out in the markets. He exerts himself in the markets. He shouts out for his merchandise. Say, buy this, buy that, I'll sell you 2 for £1. He goes all out. Whilst, the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, he is jifatin bil-layl, a corpse in the night, like a dead body. Does not pray the obligatory prayer, and this is the case of many people. Does not pray the obligatory prayer. If he does not pray the obligatory prayer, he will not be praying the sunnah prayers. And the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, because this person doesn't pray, that he is like a himarin bin nahar. He is like a donkey in the day, a corpse in the night and a donkey in the day. There are a lot of people today, even Muslims, about whom this description is correct. As the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that they would be jifatin bil layl wa himarin bin nahar, a corpse in the night and a donkey during the day, because they work really, really hard, but they do not do the good deeds. He said, this person Allah disapproves of. This person, he said, is alimin bid dunya, is an alim, is very knowledgeable about a dunya, jahilin bil akhirah, ignorant about the hereafter. The scholars, like Al-Imam Ali radiyallahu anhu, he said, these people, لا يستضيئون بنور العلم. These people are not illuminated. They are not enlightened with the light that the religious knowledge gives a person. They don't have that. وَلَا يَأْوُونَ إِلَى رُكْنٍ شَدِيدٍ. And they don't have this strong pillar to seek protection behind. They don't have it, which is faith. They do not have that. So we say, Alhamdulillah Ta'ala, that Allah granted us those people like Shaykh Abdullah that taught us and whose teachings reached us. Otherwise, where else would a person hear from a person like Shaykh Abdullah, trusted and reliable information about the hadiths of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, like this? That there are so many things that are said online. How would a person differentiate if they didn't have this solid pillar to rely upon? If a person learns a religious knowledge, then whatever they see, they can scan through it, and they can differentiate. They can sift through the material and see what's good and what's bad. But not everybody has that. Not everybody has that. There are some parents that don't have that. So then, how can they expose their children to these things? So a person has to fortify him or herself with knowledge. And a person has to beautify themselves with implementing that knowledge. This knowledge, it rather provides protection for a person, as though a person is living in a fortress. When the enemy attacks, they're able to defend themselves. As for some people, it's not like they're living in a fortress because they don't learn. It's more like they're living in a cardboard box. When the enemy attacks, La ilaha illallah. We thank Allah that Allah made us among the nation of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, and that even some 1,500 years after him sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we are still able to review his sayings, his teachings, and that we are still benefiting from his guidance alayhi salatu wassalam. We ask Allah Ta'ala to grant us his companionship, the companionship of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam in the hereafter. And we hope to drink from the basin of our Prophet, Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, and then to enter paradise, insha'Allah ta'ala. We ask Allah for a good end. Let's say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim.